Hello and welcome back to this exclusive video tutorial series from BlenderCookie.com on modeling the M4 assault rifle. My name is Jonathan Williamson, and we're going to kind of branch off from where we've been focusing on the model, and that is the body portion of the gun. And the reason I want to go ahead and do this is to actually just get a change of pace for a little bit. You know, looking through the last few parts, if you hadn't been following along with the tutorial, it would almost look as if we haven't made any progress at all. Mostly because three of the major portions of the model, including the stock, the grip, and the clip, have all been left untouched. So I want to go ahead and focus on one of those for a little while. And in this video, we're going to go ahead and do the grip, which should be fairly easy, but due to some of the extra detail in there, we do have some challenges to face. But before we get started, I want to go ahead and give a shout out and a thanks to one of our users, which is, his name's Chris Alexander, who has kindly provided us a large number of extra references. And even though I haven't included the high resolutions one just yet, he's also included all the high res that we can use, said we can go ahead and distribute them. So we'll include these with all the source files, and you can see he's gotten basically photos from every single angle of all the details, including a bipod, a halo sight, and I believe there was even one other sight that he included as well. Or I guess there's the halo right here, and then or holo sight, and also then the grip. So we've got a lot of different accessories, all the different details of the main parts. So very, very cool, and thanks to him. So we're going to go ahead and use a couple of these references today. And I've just got them pulled up on my other monitor, but I'm going to go ahead and point them out to you on what we're going to use. We're going to use this one here because we've got a good view of most of the handle right in here. And then we're also going to use, if I can find it, it's this one. No, not this one. It's this one here, where we can see the bottom of the grip and also the detail right in here really well. So let's just jump over to Blender. And the way that we're going to do this is kind of in two parts. We're going to do all of the main portions of the grip as one single model, which is this model here. And then we're going to basically cut a hole in it to match this profile to then actually add in these surface details. And the way that we'll do the surface details is with a series of array modifiers, but we want to keep these as separate models, or else we're going to have just a ridiculous poly count throughout this handle that we really don't want to have. So let's go ahead and hit Tab to go into edit mode. And the first thing that I want to do is add in a mirror modifier. So let's hit Control R, add in a loop cut right down the center. So we'll just left click and immediately right click. And since our model has stayed symmetrical this whole time, it's exactly in the center. And so navigating over to one of the side views, we can just go ahead and select all these faces by hitting B and left click and dragging across them. And let's hit X and delete the faces. We can go on over to the modifiers panel, and we just want to choose a mirror modifier, and we can go ahead and enable the clipping, and then we want to be sure to also disable the X-axis and enable the Y-axis so that it's mirroring that direction. Okay, now let's go ahead and add in our subsurf modifier as well, so subdivision surface, and we'll set the subdivisions up to level 2 and turn on optimal display. We can hit 1 to go into front view. And just so that I can, just out of my personal preference, I'm also going to go into the user preferences, and I want to change the emulate 3-button mouse and also emulate numpad on just out of habit, and then also underneath the interface, also enable rotate around selection. That's just the way that I like to work. So now let's select everything and W and shade smooth. So from the front view, let's go ahead and grab these ones here, and I just want to move them over a little bit along the X-axis. And in fact, why don't we go ahead and line these up here? So we've already got snapping set to vertex, so we can just hit G, X, hold down Control, snap to there, and do the same thing with those ones. Then I want to go ahead and add in a loop cut right down to here, where we've got this line. And if you look on the other references, you can see it more clearly, but basically we have a protrusion coming out here, which is going to butt up to the trigger guard here. And so with this, I want to go ahead and hit S, Z, and 0 to scale that down. And let's also go ahead and slide this down a little bit. And then we're just going to hit S and Y, or S and X, to scale that out along the X-axis to restore basically our nice curve here. But what that does is gives us this nice straight plane to follow right here. So with this then, I can go ahead and adjust these a little bit. Then I'm going to grab these ones here, snap them along the x-axis. So again, that's just select them, hit G, and then X to ensure that we're only going the one direction. Hold down Control and hover over those vertices. We'll do the same thing with these ones here and here. Make sure those are all nice and sharp. Let's go ahead and select this loop, and let's hit E to extrude, right click, S to scale it in a little bit, and then we might take it in a little extra along the y-axis. Since this isn't perfectly square or circular, you notice it wasn't scaling proportionally around all the different sides. Bring it in just a bit more. There we go. Then let's go ahead and add in a edge loop right here. We're going to take it all the way up to the top and then left click. And the reason we're taking it to the top is just so that then we can just slide it back down and leave us with a perfectly straight line. The other way that you could have done that would be to just add in a loop cut and then scale to 0 along the z-axis. Okay, before we go too much further, let's go ahead and fix this curve here to match this one. So I'm going to take this edge loop by just alt-right clicking on it, and then I'm just going to hit G and Y, pull it in a bit until we match this curve almost exactly like that. And that actually ought to be close enough for this. You know, it doesn't need to be exact, and in fact, it probably shouldn't be exact. And one thing I'm also going to do is just on this mesh here, this line is actually much sharper than we currently have it. So let's just select it, and we're just going to hit G and Z and pull this way down. This is one of the really sharp lines in the actual model where it's basically been cut off rather than molded necessarily, or at least as far as I can tell from the references. Okay, now what I want to do is we're just going to, let's see, let's actually bring this line back just a little bit, right about there. We'll bring these ones back just as far, and then let's actually select this whole area, and then we're just going to hit E to extrude, right click, and then pull it over along the x-axis like that. And then I want to deselect this line right here, and then we're going to hit G, Y, and snap to right there, which will then just bring those out. And so then all we need to do to sharpen this line up is to go ahead and use, well, let's see. Let me think about this for just a second. One, I want to go ahead and pull this back a bit more. And then let's just, we could just add in a loop cut like that, or we could just go ahead and use some creasing here. So I'm going to select this loop, and I'm just going to hit Shift E, and then hit, let's do 0.9. About like that. Ought to crease it pretty well. And Shift E in 256 will crease, but in previous versions, I think you just had to hit N to go on the Properties panel, and underneath the transform, you had the mean crease right here, and that's the same thing. Okay, let's go and add in another edge loop right down through here, and then I'll take it back up, and that will just help kind of accent that a little bit and smooth it back out a little, and then I'll also bring this back up like this, just to ensure that we keep this nice and smooth. Okay, that's not looking too bad, but it's still pretty square. So I'm going to go and select these edges, deselect this one here, and here, and here. And then again, I'm going to hit Shift E, and let's do a crease of, say, 0.9 yet again. And then I want to add in another edge loop right through to right here, but I'm going to leave it right in the center. And then I'm going to deselect everything but this right here. And then I'm going to hit Control E and, oops, deselect that one as well. Hit Control E and edge slide and bring that over. So what that does is just helps me avoid some of the artifacts that you get when you use just creasing rather than using both creasing and edge loops. Whereas then in contrast, if I just use the edge loops, then I would also have a higher poly count. I'm going to also crease this one just about shift or about to 5 or so, just to add in a little bit more. And let's also do this one to 5. So I just select it, hit Shift E, and then put in 5. There we go. Okay, I think that'll work nicely. So then what I want to do is we need to round these out where we added in the extra edge loops. So I'm first going to select this one, and then I'm going to deselect these vertices up here. I'm going to hit Control E and edge slide, just slide them back just a bit. And that will actually round that out almost perfectly. And maybe yeah, that ought to work well. Let's go do the same thing here. Control E and edge slide, bring that back. And there we are. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save the file. And what I want to go ahead and do now is start laying out the details for this. So let's add in another edge loop right through here. And then let's go ahead and hit Control E and edge slide it over right to the corner of this panel. And then I also want to go ahead and select this one here. But then I'm going to deselect these two and just hit Control E to slide these ones up right to the edge here as well. And we can also maybe just go ahead and slide these ones up just to even out some of our topology, make sure that it stays nice and even. And then we've got that one down there. So maybe we can adjust this shape just a little bit. And then let's just go ahead and select these here. Okay. And then I'm just going to hit E to extrude, right click, and then just pull them in along the y-axis to about right there. And then we'll add in another edge loop right about like that, just to ensure that it stays fairly sharp. And then you notice that we get these rounded edges on here that we don't necessarily want. And the way that we're just going to fix that is just add in 2 edge loops about like that. And that will actually give us almost the exact spacing that we want to keep on this. Now, currently, I don't like this sharp edge here because this ought to actually round off a bit smoother. And so I'm going to add in one more edge loop here, which then I can go ahead and just bring out along the y-axis about like that. Maybe I can slide it back in a little. And there we go. That'll just give less of a sharp corner right there. And maybe I could go ahead. No, I don't think I want to do that actually. Okay, yeah, we're just going to select these. Maybe Alt-S on these just a little bit. Alt-S again scales along the normals, allowing us just to kind of expand things, which you notice I deselect the top and the bottom ones, or else I would have brought them out of line with everything else there. Work with these just a little bit down here, and then let's go ahead and add in this this grip bottom on here. So we'll select this one, I'm going to hit Control E, edge slide it up, and we'll add another one right here, scale along the x-axis a bit, and then finally we'll add in one more, which again will scale along just the x-axis. And then let's grab these, we'll pull them out to about there, pull this one out to about there, and there we go. That does that pretty nicely. Let's go ahead and do this middle one here as well, which I'll just add in an edge loop on either side, to which then I can select these, pull it in, and pull it in. And that gives me that. So now I can just save my file. And before we jump into this middle portion here, I want to go ahead and do the bottom. And the bottom is pretty simple. If we just select these edge loops right here and this one, and then select all these bottom vertices like that. We're just going to hit E to extrude, right click, and then S to scale it in. We'll take it in further along the y-axis like this. Scale down a bit more. And you'll notice that we've got some distortion in here, so what I'm going to do is just deselect everything and then go in and move these down manually to better fit the overall shape or surface. Just about like that. And we'll move these down just a little bit. This really doesn't need to be exact, but it will give us a little better effect when close up. Okay, there we go. See, you can't even hardly tell, but it definitely does help. Pull that out along the y-axis just a bit to smooth it. And then we'll select all these. And then we're going to go ahead and hit E to extrude, take it up. Actually, let's go hit 1 to go into front view. Let's just take it right up along this direction. About like that. And we'll take it up just far enough that from most angles, you would be able to tell that this was hollow. And then we'll just hit X and delete faces. And then I want to go ahead and add in another edge loop right up to the edge here. And then we're going to go ahead and we'll add in, actually we're going to select both of these and we're going to extrude them down along the normal. Or actually we'll just move them down just a little bit. And the reason for that is that I just wanted to bring these down to create a small ridge right here. We'll go a little bit further, about like that, and then I'm also going to select this loop. I'm just going to hit X and delete edge loop because I don't want the ridge on both sides. I only want it on this one side, which then we'll go ahead and add in a crease here by hitting Shift E, and let's just do 0.75, ought to be enough. So small detail, but it definitely does help with some things, particularly when you look at it from specific angles. And I'm going to go ahead and scale this down a bit more, which means I actually need to go ahead and delete this one. But then I can select this, I'll scale it down to about there, pull it in along the y-axis a bit further, and then we can go ahead and extrude it up just a little bit at first, and then go up quite a bit further. And maybe we'll even go a little bit further up with that, which will give us a slightly more rounded corner. And there we go. So there's the inside of the grip. And what I want to do now, before we actually call this one quits, this one was kind of easy, but a nice break from the very tedious body modeling right in here. What I want to do is, actually, before we do this portion, we need to add in this section as well. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to select, say, these faces right in here. And I'm just going to hit Control-Tab, go into face mode, and then I can select all these all the way down to here. And we're going to go ahead and just hit E to extrude, take it in along the normal just a little bit, about like that. That should be fine. And then we'll go ahead and hit Control-Tab, go back to Edge mode. I'm just going to Alt-right-click, Alt-Shift-right-click, and Alt-Shift-right-click again. I just want to select all of the perimeter vertices. I'm going to hit Shift-E to add in a crease and go to 0.9. And then I also want to select the corner ones. And again, Shift-E, 0.9. We'll crease that fairly nicely. Then we'll add in another crease all the way up to the, or a edge loop, most of the way up to the top and most of the way to the bottom, which will even that out pretty nicely. Then let's also select the outside edges, and we will crease them as well. So we'll just hit Shift-E. These ones I'm only going to do to 0.5, should even that up nicely and give us some good creases. Because now I can hit Control-Tab, go into vertex mode. I'm going to select all of these vertices, except for these here and those, and then these below it, and of course that one inside. I just want this one vertex because then we're just going to go ahead and hit Shift-D, right-click, let's hit G and Shift-Z and snap right to that vertex. And we excluded the Z-axis. Well, actually, we don't need to exclude the Z-axis. We can just take it right to there. And then let's just take it out just a little bit further, because then we're just going to extrude along the Y-axis, about like this. And then we'll extrude along the X-axis. And then again along the Y, and the X, and the Y. And maybe on some of these I went a little bit too far on the X-axis. There we go. We can go ahead and even some of these up a little bit. I probably could have done that quite a bit more precisely, but that's okay. With these smaller details, you're not going to notice so much if they're not as equal or as precise. But we can go ahead and make them a little bit closer, just so that it's not quite so obvious to the eye that they're different. Okay, and then what I want to do is let's just select these. We're going to do this a loop at a time. Or actually, We're just select this. Let's hit Control L to select everything, and actually, let's see. Let's just hit P to separate by selection. Hit Tab to leave edit mode. Then we'll select this one, and we're just going to select everything except these two loops. And then we'll slide these down. And now it's giving me trouble. Okay, so we'll just do this until we've got all of them more accurately lined up. Okay, and you can see we need to maybe go ahead and then just bring these up a bit further. Let's go and select everything, W and shade smooth, then hit Control N, and then I want to go ahead and just select each one of these loop, or actually let's just hit Control Tab, go to Edge Mode. We're going to select each one of these. You notice that we're doing it in Edge Mode so that we don't select the edges in between them. Let's just hit Shift E and say 0.9. And then we'll do the same, or actually, I guess that pretty much does it. So there we go, that gives us that. And now what I want to do is to do this small piece right in here. The way that we're going to do that is, let's just select, actually let's start by doing it in here. And so we're just going to position our cursor right about there. I'm going to hit Shift A, add in a cone on this cone. Let's hit F6. We're going to align it to view. We're going to take the total vertices down to 4. About like that. And then we also want to uncap the end. Uncheck the align to view. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and just hit P, separate by selection. Then select this. We're going to hit Tab, scale it way down. Let's go ahead and remove the subsurf modifier. Let's scale it down along the Z-axis about like that. We'll rotate it around the X 90 degrees. Or actually, I guess I went... Or no, we'll just... Oh, okay, there we go. The reason that I ran into problems there was because of the clipping on the mirror modifier. Let's rotate this around the X 90 degrees, take it in like this, then we can scale it way down, scale it along the Y-axis, something about like that. Again, scale it down even further to about something roughly like that. Then we're also going to scale it along the Z-axis to make more of a diamond shape. And then what I want to go ahead and do, scale it down just a little bit more, is we're now going to add in our first array modifier. The array modifier is just going to go over like this. And then we can go ahead and keep the offset like so. Let's turn the count up until we've got about the right number. Maybe something about like that, I would think. Then we can go ahead and add in another array modifier, but this time we're going to go 0 along the Y, or along the Y, and or along the X. We're going to go ahead and do 0.5 along the, oh, that's the Y-axis, whoops. I want 0.5 along the Z-axis. Negative 0.5, sorry. There we go. And then we're also going to go 0.5 along the X-axis, or I guess it's not 0.5, it's going to be 0.4 will be close enough. There we go. And then we'll just increase this count. And actually, let's go ahead and do negative 0.4. Oops, I guess that's 0.04. There we go. Negative 0.04. And then we can just increase this count down like this. We'll keep going. Maybe let's go ahead and scale this whole thing up a little bit. Maybe it was too small initially. About like that. There we go. Let's take this original one We don't want to do that. Let's do it just like that. And then what I will do, let's increase this count just a little bit. We can take this. Okay, there we go. That's going to be close enough because you're never going to see some subtle changes in this amount of detail. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go in here. Let's go ahead and hit Shift A, add in a lattice. On this lattice, I just want to move it down to about there. Let's scale it along the x-axis. We'll rotate it around the y, something about like this. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and change the type here. We're going to decrease it to, no, we're going to go ahead and keep it at 2, and we'll keep 2 there, but around the U, I want to go ahead and add in, we'll do 6. And then on this, let's jump over here, and this also ought to be set in there we go. We actually need to decrease the depth on that. And actually, since we're setting it in there, all of the smaller ones get hidden. So let's actually forget about doing the lattice. And instead, we just need to adjust our arrays. And you can see that that's affecting this one down here when we increase that count. So let's just adjust this, say to negative 0.35. Oops. Negative 0.035. There we go. That's about perfect. We can then increase this count all the way down to about right there. And we'll take this in just a little further along the y-axis, about like that. And then let's go in here. We're going to hit Control 3 to go to the back or the side view. Actually, first we need to go into vertex mode. We're going to select these vertices. Let's hide this for a moment. Select these, and then we'll unhide these, go back into edit mode, and then I just want to pull this in along the y-axis to right about there so it's more accurate. Okay, there we are. One thing that we can do on this actually to make it a little bit more accurate, on this, let's add in a slight bulge to it. So we're going to bring this out along the y-axis just a little bit, like that. And then we can go ahead and grab all of these ones over here. We'll take them in just a little bit. And we can maybe take these in just a little bit as well. Because then on this, I'm actually going to go ahead and re-add that lattice modifier. We're going to rotate this, scale it along the local x-axis by double tapping X. Rotate this down approximately to fit. Scale it in along the y-axis here. And then we're going to increase the U count to 4. Let's select this, go down here, add in a lattice modifier. And on this, we'll then choose the lattice. And then we're just going to select these and these. And we're just going to scale out along the y-axis until that fits. Then we can grab these ones, these ones, these ones, and these ones, and scale them in to hide those meshes. I'm going to go ahead and center my cursor right there, which is still aligned along the y-axis in the grid, and I'm just going to hit Control-Alt-Shift-C and Origin to 3D Cursor, which will then just allow me to rotate this just a little bit to better fit into the gun handle there. And I'll go ahead and select these as well, bring them in just a little bit. And if you want even more control on your lattice, you can go ahead and increase the W count as well to modify just smaller portions. So there we go. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, and actually one last thing is I'm just going to go in here, add in one edge loop right about to there, and then I'm going to select these two, and I'm going to hit E to extrude, right click, Alt S to scale in just a little bit, and then we'll actually go ahead and select these, bring them in further along the y-axis just to create a seam in the handle like there should be. And actually we could go ahead and do the same thing right over here. Maybe we'll scale to 0 along the Y. Bring these in, select these, E to extrude, Alt S, take it in just a littlest bit. And then maybe take these in a little bit more. There we go. Help add in some extra realism to that. And I think we're going to go ahead and call that quits. I know that this really ought to line up perfectly. Maybe we could bring this in. We could bring it in just a little bit, but then we're going to go ahead and kind of mess up some of the other things that we've done. And at this point, I don't know that it's a real big deal that these don't line up exactly. You know, we could make some adjustments if we chose to, but for the time being, I think we'll go ahead and leave them, and we can adjust them later if we wish. But for the time being, I'm just going to hide the lattice so we can get a good look at the model by itself. And there we go. So we've made some good progress. We got the grip at least mostly complete, although I did notice just now that this right here is sticking through. But there we go. Okay, so there we are. So after this one, we're going to go ahead and go on to either finishing up the body, the stock, or the clip, and hopefully in a few more parts, we can actually go ahead and call this model done.